When I met my son's fiancée, she laughed in my face. At least you don't need a mask for Halloween. You're scary enough as it is. The hurtful joke hit me like a betrayal from someone close to me. But when her parents recognized me, they burst into tears and whispered, "Is it really you?" Her world was turned upside down. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and write in the comments what time it is where you are now. I checked the roast one last time, pressing my finger against the crust. Perfect. The potatoes had that golden color my late wife Marie used to achieve, and the green beans sat in the serving dish I'd inherited from my mother. 62 years of living had taught me that first impressions mattered, and I wanted Gordon's fiancée to see that his father knew how to set a proper table. The dining room looked good. I'd polished the mahogany table that morning, positioned the chairs just so, even put out cloth napkins instead of paper. Pearl Morrison, that was her name. Gordon had been dating her for 4 months, spoke about her with an excitement I hadn't heard in his voice since his divorce 3 years back. I wanted this to work, wanted him happy, wanted to welcome whoever made my son smile like that. The doorbell rang at 6 sharp. I smoothed my shirt, walked to the front door, opened it with what I hoped was a warm, fatherly smile. "At least you won't need a Halloween mask. You're scary enough already." Pearl's words hit me like cold water. She stood there, grinning, blonde hair pulled back, dressed in clothes that probably cost more than my monthly pension. Gordon stood beside her, and instead of correcting her, instead of saying anything, he let out this awkward chuckle that made my stomach turn. My smile froze. "Come in. Dinner's ready." Pearl stepped past me, her eyes already scanning. She touched the door frame, glanced at the coat rack, examined the corner of the living room visible from the entrance. Her gaze moved like an appraiser's, calculating, judging. Gordon followed her in, gave me a quick shoulder pat that felt more like an apology than a greeting. In the dining room, I pulled out chairs for them. Pearl sat down, looked at the table setting, then at the walls. "Gordon mentioned you've lived here forever," she said, running her finger along the table edge. "The furniture certainly proves it. Do you ever think about updating?" I set the roast down carefully. "I like my home the way it is." "Of course you do." Her smile didn't reach her eyes. Gordon cleared his throat. "Dad's always been sentimental about this place. Right, Dad?" I carved the roast, placed slices on their plates. Pearl pushed hers slightly away before even tasting it, a small gesture I wasn't supposed to notice. But I did. I noticed everything now. "So, Clarence," Pearl said, picking up her fork like it might be contaminated, "you're retired now? What do you do with your time?" "I stay busy, I'm sure." She took a tiny bite, chewed slowly. "It must be lonely in such a big house. Do you ever think about downsizing? This place must cost a fortune to maintain." Gordon leaned toward her, physically choosing her side without realizing it. I sat at the head of my own table, watching them form a united front across from me. "The house is paid off," I said. "Maintenance is manageable." Pearl set down her fork. "Still, 4 bedrooms for one person. The neighborhood used to be nicer too, from what Gordon tells me. Property values have shifted." Something in her tone made me go very still. She wasn't making conversation. She was calculating. "The neighborhood is fine," I replied. Of course, of course." She touched Gordon's arm, that possessive little gesture. "Gordon and I were discussing options after the wedding. It seems silly to rent when there's so much unused space here. We could really breathe new life into this place." There it was, the real reason for this dinner. She wasn't here to meet me. She was here to stake her claim. I looked at Gordon. He wouldn't meet my eyes. "This is my home," I said quietly. Pearl's smile widened. "Of course it is. For now." The silence that followed felt like standing on the edge of something dangerous. I could feel my hands wanting to shake, feel the anger building behind my ribs, but I'd spent 30 years running into burning buildings while staying calm. I knew how to control myself. I stood up. "Thank you both for coming. I think we're done for tonight." Gordon's head snapped up. "Dad, we just got here." "I said we're done." Pearl's expression shifted, annoyance flashing across her face before she smoothed it away. She stood, gathered her purse with deliberate movements. "Well, I suppose we know where we stand." Gordon looked between us, confused, like he couldn't understand why his father was ending the evening, like he hadn't heard every insult his fiancée had delivered. like he hadn't laughed when she called me scary. I walked to the front door, opened it. The March evening air felt cold against my face. Pearl walked out first, her heels clicking on the porch. Gordon hesitated. "Dad?" "Good night, Gordon." He left. I closed the door, turned the lock, stood in the sudden silence of my house. My hands were shaking now. I let them. In the kitchen, the dinner I'd spent hours preparing sat cooling on the table. Pearl's plate was still full, pushed away like garbage. I cleared the table slowly, scraping her barely touched food into the trash. Washed each dish with precise, controlled movements. My jaw hurt from clenching it. The woman had walked into my home and cataloged everything I owned, like she was already planning where to hang her pictures. And my son had sat there and let her do it. I dried the last plate, put it away, turned off the kitchen light, stood in the darkness of my living room, too angry to sleep, replaying every moment. Her smirk, Gordon's weak chuckle, her casual mention of unused space, like I was just an inconvenient obstacle between her and my property. The anger settled into something colder, sharper, understanding. This woman didn't see a person when she looked at me. She saw an asset to be acquired. I never went to bed that night. Sat in my recliner in the dark, watching streetlights paint shadows across the ceiling, hearing Pearl's voice on repeat. "At least you won't need a Halloween mask." Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Gordon's face, that nervous chuckle, the way he'd leaned toward her instead of defending me. By the time dawn light crept through the curtains, I'd replayed the evening 24 times. Each replay made it clearer. This wasn't about family. This was about real estate. The phone rang at 8:30. I looked at the caller ID. "Gordon," I answered. "Yes." "You embarrassed us last night." His voice was tight, accusatory. "Pearl was trying to connect with you, and you just shut down. What's your problem?" "My problem is being insulted in my own home." "She was joking. You're too sensitive. You need to apologize." Something in my chest went quiet and cold. "No, I don't." "Fine." He sounded like a teenager, petulant. "Don't expect to hear from us for a while." He hung up. I set the phone down, looked at my hands. Steady now. The shaking from last night had burned itself out, left something harder in its place. The week that followed felt strange. I kept my routine. Morning walk, grocery shopping on Tuesday, coffee at the diner on Thursday. But Gordon's absence sat in everything I did. I drove past his apartment twice. Didn't stop. Didn't call. Just drove past, looking at the windows, wondering if Pearl was in there planning her next move. At night, I sat at my computer, reading. Oregon inheritance laws, estate planning, property rights. The screen's glow hurt my eyes, but I kept reading, taking notes in my careful handwriting, highlighting passages about protection from family claims. I was learning the rules of a game I hadn't known I was playing. 7 days after that first call, Gordon called again. Different tone this time, excited, rushed. "Dad, I have great news. Pearl and I are engaged. The wedding's in July." I measured my response. "That's fast." "When you know, you know." He sounded so happy, so convinced. "And we've been discussing logistics. Your house makes perfect sense for us." There it was again. My house. Their logistics. "What are you talking about?" I asked, though I already knew. "You've got all that room and you're alone there. 4 bedrooms just sitting empty. We'd be helping you out, really. Pearl's already looking at paint colors for the guest rooms." "Those aren't guest rooms," I said. "This is my house." "Don't be selfish, Dad. It's time to think about family." Family. The word tasted bitter. "Let me be clear, Gordon. You and Pearl will not be moving into my house. Not now. Not after the wedding. Not ever." "You can't be serious." "I've never been more serious. This conversation is over." I hung up before he could respond. Sat there holding the silent phone, feeling something shift inside me. I wasn't hurt anymore. I was done being defensive. They wanted to play chess with my life? Fine. But they'd picked the wrong opponent. I walked to my home office, pulled out the filing cabinet. Deed to the house, existing will, bank statements, pension information. I spread everything across the desk, taking inventory. Everything I'd worked for, everything I'd built through 30 years of crawling through smoke and carrying people out of burning buildings. Everything they thought they could just claim because I was old and alone, and supposedly too weak to fight back. I picked up the phone, called a notary service. I need someone to come to my home. Estate documents. Yes, as soon as possible. She arrived 2 days later, a professional woman in her 40s carrying a leather briefcase. I'd spent those 2 days drafting, researching, preparing. We sat at my dining room table, the same table where Pearl had insulted me, and I signed new documents. Each signature felt like drawing a line in the sand. These changes mean your estate will be handled according to these specific terms, regardless of any family expectations, the notary said, reviewing the papers. Are you certain? I'm certain. Where do I sign? After she left, I sat at my desk with a fresh notebook. Wrote down everything I knew. Pearl's background. Nothing yet, but I'd find out. Gordon's finances. Probably stretched thin if they were so eager to move into my house. Property laws. Studied. Will modifications. Completed. I crossed out options that wouldn't work. Circled strategies worth pursuing. By the time I closed the notebook, the afternoon sun was slanting through the windows. My reflection in the dark computer screen looked different. Harder. Calmer. I wasn't the confused host trying to please his son's fiancées anymore. I wasn't the father desperately hoping Gordon would defend him. I was a man who'd spent his life learning how to assess threats, formulate strategies, and execute plans under pressure. I'd pulled people from burning buildings. I'd made life or death decisions in seconds. I'd survived situations that would have broken weaker men. Pearl Morrison thought she could walk into my home, insult me, and take what was mine. She thought I'd roll over because I was old, because I was alone, because she'd convinced my son to choose her side. She was wrong. I opened the notebook again, started writing. Real plans this time, with timelines and contingencies. They wanted war? They'd get one. But it would be fought on my terms, with my rules, and they wouldn't see it coming until it was too late. The phone rang. Gordon again. I didn't answer. Let it ring until the machine picked up. His voice, muffled through the speaker, sounded frustrated. Dad, we need to talk about this. You're being unreasonable. Call me back. I erased the message without listening to the rest. There was nothing left to discuss. They'd made their move. Now I'd make mine. 3 weeks passed quietly. I kept my routines, worked in the garage organizing tools I'd already organized twice, answered calls from old colleagues, but not from Gordon. The silence from my son felt deliberate, like he was regrouping. I knew what was coming. People like Pearl didn't give up. They adjusted tactics. The doorbell rang on a Tuesday afternoon while I was replacing a hinge on my workbench. I wiped my hands, walked through the house, saw Gordon through the front window. Alone, nervous posture, shifting his weight. I opened the door. Can we talk? He asked. I stepped aside, let him in, didn't offer coffee. We sat in the living room, me in my chair, him on the couch. Not comfortable, not social. Whatever this was, it had an agenda. Pearl and I have been planning the wedding, he started, hands clasped between his knees. The venues in Portland aren't cheap. We want to do things right, start our marriage properly. He paused, looked at his hands. I need to borrow $15,000. There it was, clean and direct. I almost respected the approach. That's a significant amount, I said. I know, but your family. This is important. His voice picked up speed like he was working through a script. Pearl is accustomed to a certain lifestyle. Her parents would help, but they've got their own financial situation. We'll pay you back, obviously. Once we're settled. My answer's no. He blinked. What? I live on a fixed pension. That money isn't available. His jaw tightened. Come on, Dad. You could access home equity if you wanted. You just don't want to help us. I don't want to fund a wedding I'm not convinced should happen. Gordon stood up, started pacing. This is exactly what Pearl said you'd do. You're sitting in a house worth $500,000 in this market, and you won't help your only son get married? What are you saving it all for? I stayed seated, kept my voice level. It's mine. I earned it. That's reason enough. Earned it, he said it like an accusation. You worked, sure, but now you're alone here with 4 empty bedrooms, while Pearl and I are cramped in a 1-bedroom apartment, struggling to afford a decent wedding. And you won't what? Hand over my equity because your fiancé is used to a certain lifestyle? His face flushed. That's not fair. Pearl really wants to be part of this family. She's already planning our future here. She found this great designer who specializes in updating older homes while keeping their character. She's thinking long term, Dad. She's thinking about. I stood up. Updating my home? While I'm still living in it? Gordon froze. He'd said too much, and he knew it. She was just looking ahead, he stammered. Making plans for when. Eventually. Eventually I'll die, and she'll redecorate. I walked to the desk drawer, pulled out the folder I'd prepared weeks ago, set it on the coffee table between us. Since we're discussing my assets, you should know I've revised my estate plan. He stared at the folder like it might bite him. When I die, this house will be sold. The proceeds go to the Portland Firefighters Benevolent Fund. His face went white. You're cutting me out of your will? I'm ensuring my property serves people who respect what it represents. People who understood what it took to earn it. This is insane. His voice cracked. You're doing this because you don't like Pearl? Because she made a bad first impression? I'm doing this because she's shown me exactly who she is, and you're too busy defending her to see it. Gordon grabbed the folder, flipped it open. Official papers, notary seals, foundation information. His hands shook. She was right about you, he said quietly. She said you'd never accept her, said you'd find ways to punish us. I walked to the front door, opened it. This conversation is over. Dad, leave, Gordon. He stood there, folder clutched in his hands, looking between me and the open door. Finally, he walked out. I watched him cross the lawn to his car. He didn't get in immediately. Instead, he leaned against the driver's door, talking. I stepped closer to the window, saw the phone pressed to his ear. No, not to his ear. On speaker, resting on the car roof. She'd been listening. The whole time. Pearl had been on that phone, hearing everything. Gordon pulled the phone down, said something into it I couldn't hear. Then he looked back at my house, and even from this distance I could see his expression. Angry, confused, hurt. He got in the car. But before he did, I caught a glimpse through his windshield. Pearl's face on the phone screen, visible for just a moment. Her expression wasn't confused or hurt. It was calculating. I closed the door, locked it, walked back to the living room, stood looking at the coffee table where the folder had been. Gordon had taken it with him. Good. Let him show Pearl every page. Let her see the notary seal, the charity's address, the lawyer's signature. Let her understand that her entire strategy had just collapsed. I returned to the garage, picked up my tools, finished the hinge repair. My hands were steady. No anger, no regret. Just the calm that comes from knowing you've made the right move at the right time. They'd wanted my house. They'd planned for it, counted on it, built their future around it, and I'd just shown them it would never be theirs. The phone rang an hour later. Gordon. I didn't answer. It rang again 20 minutes after that. Still didn't answer. Let them sit with it. Let them realize I wasn't negotiating. That night, I sat at my desk and updated my notebook. Recorded the date, the conversation, Gordon's slip about the designer, Pearl listening on the phone. Evidence of their intentions. Documented and time-stamped. My father used to say that in any fight, the person who stays calm wins. Not the strongest or the fastest, the calmest. The one who can think while everyone else is reacting. I'd spent 30 years staying calm while buildings burned around me. This was no different. Pearl Morrison thought she could manipulate her way into my home, use my son as leverage, wait me out until I died and left her everything. She'd made one critical mistake. She'd underestimated who she was fighting. The phone call came a week later, unexpected enough to make me suspicious. Dad? Gordon's voice was careful, rehearsed. I know things got heated last time. Pearl feels awful about it. She wants to apologize properly. Can we take you to lunch? Just talking. No agenda. I let the silence stretch. Heard him breathing, waiting. Neutral location, I said finally. Tomorrow, noon. I'll choose the place. Sure, yeah. Whatever works. I picked a diner near downtown. Nothing fancy. The kind of place where you couldn't perform wealth. I arrived 15 minutes early. Took a booth with my back to the wall. View of the entrance. Old habit from the firehouse. Always know your exits. Always see who's coming. Gordon and Pearl walked in at noon exactly. She'd dressed down, jeans, simple blouse, minimal makeup, none of the flashy jewelry from that first dinner. Her hair was pulled back softly instead of the severe style she'd worn before. every detail calculated to look humble. They slid into the booth across from me. Pearl folded her hands on the table, made eye contact. "I need to apologize," she said. "I was nervous meeting you, and I overcompensated by being critical. That wasn't fair. Gordon talks about you all the time, and I want us to start over." Her tone was perfect, contrite but not groveling, vulnerable but not weak. If I hadn't seen her real face, I might have believed it. "Actions matter more than words," I said. "I understand. Let me prove it." The lunch was painfully civil. Pearl asked about my firefighting career, questions she should have asked at that first dinner. Gordon relaxed, probably thinking his father and fiancée were finally connecting. I answered with enough detail to seem engaged, not enough to seem warm. When the check came, Pearl reached for it. "Please, let me." I let her pay. Watched how she counted out bills, making sure the server saw her leave a generous tip. Performance, all of it. 3 days later, they showed up at my door with grocery bags. "We were at the store and thought of you," Gordon said, grinning like this was spontaneous. It wasn't. The bags contained expensive items I'd never buy myself: imported olive oil, artisan bread, organic vegetables. Pearl moved through my kitchen like she was trying on the space, putting things away, making helpful comments about my organizational system, complimenting the tile backsplash she'd probably criticized to Gordon in private. "This kitchen has great bones," she said. "You just don't see craftsmanship like this anymore." They stayed an hour. Pearl was warm, engaged, asked about my neighbors. When she left, she hugged me. Brief, appropriate, not too familiar. Gordon looked hopeful. The visits continued. Once a week, then twice. Sometimes with groceries, sometimes offering to help with yard work. Gordon knew I didn't need help with. Pearl's performance was consistent, but I watched for the cracks. They came. Standing at my front window during one visit, looking out at Tom's yard across the street, Pearl said, "Your neighbor really should do something about that yard. It makes the whole street look unfortunate." "Tom works 2 jobs," I replied. "He does his best." She didn't hear the warning in my voice. "Well, property values affect everyone. Some people just don't understand that." I filed it away. Another visit, she helped put away groceries and pivoted to finances. "Have you thought about what you'll do with the house eventually? I mean, maintaining it alone must be expensive. Gordon and I have been researching reverse mortgages." "I'm not discussing my finances with you." She backed off quickly, smiled, changed topics. But the intent had been clear. After each visit, I sat at my desk and wrote dated entries. What she said about Tom's yard, how she'd assessed my kitchen like she was planning renovations, the way she'd steered conversation toward money despite claiming she wanted to start over. 4 weeks into this charm campaign, they visited on a Sunday afternoon. Pearl excused herself to use the bathroom. When they left an hour later, I found magazines on my coffee table. Restoration Hardware, West Elm, expensive furniture catalogs I'd never order. I picked one up. Sticky notes marked various pages. Pearl's handwriting. Master bedroom, lighter colors. Living room, modern minimalist. Replace that awful wallpaper. She'd written room names from my house, marked furniture for spaces she didn't own. Left them here deliberately, I realized. A message, a claim, a preview of her intentions. The next visit, I was ready. "You left some reading material here," I said casually, holding up a catalog. Pearl's expression flickered. Surprise, then calculation. "Oh, those catalogs. I was just getting ideas for our apartment." I opened to a marked page, read her note aloud. "Master bedroom, lighter colors." "You don't have a master bedroom in an apartment, Pearl." Her smile froze. Gordon looked confused. "I must have been thinking about dream houses," she said lightly. "You know how it is, looking at furniture and imagining—" "You were imagining my master bedroom." I set the catalog down. "In my house." "Dad," Gordon started, She was just planning to redecorate my home. Again, despite all these apologies and visits and promises that she's changed. I looked at Pearl. "You haven't changed anything except your approach." Pearl's mask cracked. Just for a second I saw anger flash across her face before she smoothed it away. "You're being paranoid," she said, but her voice had an edge now. "Am I? You've spent weeks performing concern, bringing groceries I don't need, pretending to care about my life, all while making notes about which rooms you'll update first. Gordon stood up. This is ridiculous. She made some notes in a catalog. With room names for my house, Gordon. Specific plans for spaces she doesn't live in and never will. They left shortly after. No warmth in the goodbye. Pearl's performance had shattered, and she knew it. Alone, I flipped through the catalogs again, examined each note, each marked page. She'd been meticulous, matching furniture to specific rooms, noting measurements, planning color schemes. This wasn't casual browsing. This was an interior design strategy for a house she'd already claimed in her mind. I walked to my filing cabinet, pulled out the estate documents, checked the Charity Foundation's information one more time. Everything was in order. Pearl had adapted her tactics, played a longer game, but she couldn't hide her nature. The contempt for working-class neighbors, the obsession with property values, the inability to stop planning for a future in my home. She'd revealed herself repeatedly, thinking I wouldn't notice because Gordon didn't. I'd given her enough rope. She'd shown me everything I needed to see. The war hadn't ended. It had just gone underground, and now I knew exactly what I was fighting. The call came during breakfast 4 days later. I was eating toast, reading the newspaper's local section, coffee steaming in my favorite mug. Ordinary Tuesday morning. The phone rang. Gordon's number. I set down my coffee carefully. Yes? Great news, Dad. His voice had that artificial brightness people use when they're about to ask for something unreasonable. We've moved the wedding up to July, and Pearl thinks it makes sense for us to move in right after. You've got all that space, and honestly, we're worried about you being alone. My hand tightened on the phone. I'm not alone. I'm independent, and you're not moving in. Don't be like that. Think about it practically. 4 bedrooms, just you rattling around. We'd help with expenses, keep you company. Gordon, the answer is no. His tone shifted, frustration bleeding through the rehearsed cheerfulness. You know what your problem is? You're selfish. You'd rather sit in that big house alone than help your own son. Do you even want me to be happy? I want you to be happy with someone who isn't trying to steal my home. Steal? We're trying to build a family. But you're so stuck in your ways, so bitter about being alone, that you can't see. Background noise, then Pearl's voice, shrill and close. She'd grabbed the phone. You ungrateful old man. She was screaming now, all pretense gone. We've tried being nice. We've tried including you, and you just push us away. You're standing in the way of our future because you're bitter and alone, and you can't stand seeing other people happy. I held the phone away from my ear. Her voice came through tinny and distorted, rage making her words sharp and ugly. Nothing like the woman who'd apologized at that restaurant, who'd brought groceries, and smiled, and played humble. This conversation is over, I said calmly. We'll see about that. I hung up, set the phone on the table. My toast had gone cold. I wasn't hungry anymore. The silence that followed was different from before, heavier, waiting. 3 days passed, no calls, no visits. I kept my routines, but the tension sat in my chest like pressure before a storm. Then the mail came. Among the bills and advertisements was a professional envelope, Portland Realty Group. I opened it standing at my kitchen counter. Dear homeowner, thank you for your interest in our property evaluation services. Per your request, through Ms. Pearl Morrison, we've prepared a preliminary market analysis for your property at... I read it twice. The estimated value, $540,000. The request date, 3 weeks ago. Right in the middle of Pearl's charm offensive, when she'd been visiting with groceries and smiles and furniture catalogs. She'd been pricing my house, while pretending to apologize, while bringing me food, while performing concern. She'd been researching what my property was worth, planning to sell it, calculating her profit. I picked up the phone, called the real estate agency. A woman answered, professional and pleasant. I'm the homeowner at this address, I said. I never authorized this appraisal. A pause. Our records show Pearl Morrison contacted us on behalf of the family. She said you'd agreed to explore options for estate planning purposes. I agreed to nothing. Send me all correspondence related to this request. Every email, every note, every document. Of course, sir. I apologize for any confusion. We'll send everything today. I hung up, stood in my kitchen holding that letter, feeling something cold and final settle into place. She hadn't just wanted my house. She'd already been planning what to do with it after she had it. Researching market value, contacting agents, building her strategy while serving me organic vegetables and acting like she cared. I drove downtown that afternoon to an office building I'd researched days before. Rebecca Chen, attorney at law. Her receptionist showed me to a conference room with a view of the river. Ms. Chen arrived with a notepad and reading glasses, professional suit, firm handshake. "Tell me what's happening, Mr. Phillips." I spread the documents across her table. Property deed, previous will, the real estate letter, Pearl's furniture catalogs with her room notes. I explained the situation without emotion. Gordon's engagement, Pearl's behavior, the dinner insults, the money request, the false reconciliation, the property inquiry. She took notes in neat shorthand, asked pointed questions, examined each document. "What you're describing is financial exploitation positioning," she said finally. "She's laying groundwork to claim interest in your property. The fact that she's already researching market value suggests she's planning well ahead. Can she succeed? Not if we document properly. Your mental competence is clear, your decisions are sound, and we'll create legal structures she can't penetrate." Over the next hour, she outlined strategies, living trust amendments, transfer on death deed updates, documentation proving sound mind and absence of undue influence, beneficiary confirmations with the charity foundation, letters to Gordon explicitly stating his non-inheritance status regarding the property. Every page designed to close doors Pearl thought she could use. "She'll have no standing to contest anything," Ms. Chen said. "These documents, properly executed and witnessed, create legal barriers that even aggressive litigation can't break through, particularly in Oregon, where property rights and testamentary freedom are strongly protected." I signed documents for the next 40 minutes. Each signature witnessed by her, paralegal, notarized, dated, sealed. Each page another lock on a door Pearl had been trying to open. When we finished, Ms. Chen handed me copies in a leather portfolio. "Keep these somewhere secure. Make sure your son knows they exist. Transparency removes her ability to claim surprise or manipulation later." I drove home with the portfolio on my passenger seat. Back in my house, I filed the documents in my safe, kept copies in my desk, spread them across the dining room table one more time, reviewing what we'd built: irrevocable trust, transfer on death deed, updated will with mental competency affidavit, letters of intent, charity beneficiary confirmations, foundation acceptance documentation. Pearl Morrison had walked into my life 4 months ago with a plan to acquire my property. She'd insulted me, manipulated my son, performed false kindness, researched property values, made room-by-room renovation plans, and positioned herself to claim everything I'd worked for. And I'd just locked every door she'd been planning to use. My phone rang. Gordon again. I didn't answer. Let it go to voicemail, didn't bother listening to the message. Whatever he wanted to say, whatever new angle Pearl had coached him on, it didn't matter anymore. I'd built walls she couldn't climb, locked doors she couldn't open, created legal structures she couldn't penetrate. The house was mine, would always be mine, and when I died, it would serve people who understood what it took to earn it. She'd played a long game, but I'd played a better one. A week passed in careful silence. I worked in my garage, tended my small vegetable garden, had coffee at the diner with Tom from across the street, settled into the idea that my relationship with Gordon might be permanently severed. It hurt less than I expected. Maybe I'd been preparing for it longer than I realized. The phone rang on a Tuesday afternoon. Gordon's number. I almost didn't answer. "Dad," his voice sounded exhausted. "I know you're angry. I know Pearl crossed lines. But the wedding's in 3 weeks, and I can't get married with this tension." I said nothing. Let him fill the silence. "Pearl's parents, Thomas and Donna, they're good people. Maybe if we all meet, we can find some understanding. One more dinner, please. If this happens, it's in a restaurant," I said, neutral ground. "Having them come to your home would mean something. It shows you're willing to include her family in your space. Please, Dad, let them see who you really are." I thought about it. Weighed the risk of another disaster against the slim possibility of reaching Gordon one last time before this marriage locked him in. "I'll do this dinner," I said finally. "But understand, This is the last attempt. No more negotiations, no more chances. After Saturday, we'll both know where we stand. I understand. Relief flooded his voice. Thank you for giving us this. Don't thank me yet. Truth has a way of emerging at these gatherings. We set it for Saturday evening, 6 o'clock. Gordon would bring Pearl. Her parents would arrive separately. 6 people. 1 table. Whatever happened next. After hanging up, I walked through my house, seeing it with fresh eyes. Not just my space, but the stage for whatever was coming. The dining room where Pearl had first insulted me. The living room where I'd refused to fund their wedding. The kitchen where I'd received the real estate letter. Every room told part of this story. I spent the next days preparing. Cleaned windows until they gleamed, letting summer light flood through every room. Nothing to hide. Polished the dining table, that same mahogany surface where so much had already happened. Washed the good dishes, arranged 6 place settings, planned a menu that was neither extravagant nor simple. Roast chicken, seasoned vegetables, fresh bread, food that spoke of care and competence. Gordon called twice about details. Dietary restrictions? None. Arrival time? 6 o'clock sharp. What to bring? Nothing. Just themselves. Pearl says her parents are easygoing, he told me. They'll appreciate the effort. We'll see what they appreciate, I replied. Friday evening, I trimmed the front hedges, mowed the lawn, made the house look welcoming, even though I wasn't sure I felt welcoming. But appearances mattered. If this dinner failed, it wouldn't be because I hadn't tried. Saturday morning, I woke at 5:30. Couldn't sleep longer. Dressed carefully, pressed khakis, button-down shirt. Nothing fancy but respectful. Started food preparation early. The chicken went in the oven at 4. Vegetables prepped and ready. Bread warming. Everything timed to be perfect at 6. By 5 o'clock, the house smelled like a real dinner should. Warm, inviting, home-cooked. I checked the dining room one more time. 6 places set. Napkins folded. Water glasses positioned. Wine ready if anyone wanted it. I stood in that dining room, hands in my pockets, looking at the prepared table. 6 chairs. 6 people who'd be sitting here in an hour, each with their own agenda, their own version of what should happen. Gordon wanted peace, wanted his father and his future wife to coexist somehow. Pearl wanted my property, wanted Gordon convinced that his father was the problem, wanted access to everything I'd built. Pearl's parents were unknowns. Gordon said they were good people, but he'd also said Pearl was wonderful when they first met. And me? I wanted truth. Wanted my son to see clearly what he was marrying. Wanted this situation resolved, one way or another. The late afternoon sun came through the windows at an angle, making the polished table gleam. Everything was ready. Food cooking, table set, house clean, me dressed and prepared. I sat in my living room armchair, the same chair where I'd sat sleepless after that first disastrous dinner. Folded my hands, breathed slowly. I'd spent 30 years running into burning buildings. Learned early that fear didn't help. Panic got you killed. You assessed the situation, made your plan, executed it with calm precision. You stayed ready for anything. This was no different. Whatever walked through my door tonight, anger, manipulation, genuine reconciliation, complete breakdown, I was ready for it. I'd done everything I could. Protected my property legally, prepared my home properly, offered genuine hospitality, despite everything that had happened. The rest was up to the people who'd sit at that table. My watch showed 5:45, 15 minutes. I stood, walked to the kitchen, checked the chicken one last time. Perfect. Turned off the oven, let it rest. Moved to the front window, looked out at the street. Empty for now. The setting sun painted everything gold. My lawn, my hedges, my house. The home I'd worked 30 years to own, maintained for 3 decades since, protected with every legal tool I could find. Tonight would change something fundamental. Either Gordon would finally see what I'd been trying to show him, or we'd end whatever remained of our relationship. Either Pearl's parents would reveal something useful, or they'd be more people I had to keep at arm's length. Either way, by the time everyone left tonight, we'd all know exactly where we stood. I returned to my armchair, sat quietly, hands folded, breathing steady, ready. Headlights swept through my front window at 5:40. I checked my watch. 20 minutes early. Unexpected. I took a breath, set down the dish towel I'd been using to wipe already clean counters, walked to the door. Gordon and Pearl stood on my porch. He held a wine bottle. She wore a cream-colored dress I hadn't seen before, and both had matching smiles that looked rehearsed in his bathroom mirror. "We know we're early," Gordon said, shifting his weight like a kid caught sneaking dessert. Pearl was ready, and I figured we could help with last-minute things. I stepped aside. "Come in." Pearl entered with her performance already running. "Clarence, the house looks absolutely lovely. You've gone to so much trouble." She touched my arm lightly as she passed, a gesture of affection that felt calculated even in its spontaneity. "It's no trouble." I took their coats, hung them in the hallway closet, accepted the wine Gordon handed me. "Expensive label, probably Pearl's choice." "See?" Gordon's relief was palpable. "I told you this would be good." We moved to the kitchen. I pulled the chicken from the oven, perfectly browned, timing immaculate despite their early arrival. Gordon immediately started making himself useful, carrying serving dishes to the dining room, arranging things on the sideboard. Pearl positioned herself at the counter, found the bread basket without asking where it was, started slicing the loaf I'd left on the cutting board. "Where do you want the salad bowl?" Gordon called from the dining room, left side of the table, near the head. "Got it." Pearl opened a drawer, pulled out serving spoons like she lived here. "Third drawer. I remember from my other visits." The words landed deliberately. She wanted me to know she'd cataloged everything, remembered the layout, studied this house she intended to claim. Her eyes met mine briefly, and beneath the helpful daughter-in-law performance, I saw satisfaction. She thought she was winning. Gordon's phone buzzed. He pulled it from his pocket, grimaced at the screen. "Work. Are you kidding me? I'm sorry. I have to take this." He glanced at Pearl apologetically, then at me. 2 minutes, I promise." He stepped onto the back porch, pulling the door closed. Through the window, I could see him pacing, one hand gesturing as he talked. The kitchen felt smaller suddenly, just Pearl and me with the counter between us. Her smile disappeared. The transformation was instant, like watching a mask slide off to reveal the face underneath. Her expression went cold, calculating, predatory. "You understand your mistake now, old man?" Her voice dropped to a hiss, low enough that Gordon wouldn't hear through the closed door. "Gordon's on my side, completely. He does whatever I tell him. You've been playing your games, changing your will, talking to lawyers, building your little legal walls, but you've already lost." I kept my hands steady on the counter, met her eyes without flinching. "After the wedding, this house, your money, everything you're trying to protect, it's just a matter of time." She moved closer, leaning across the counter, invading the space. "Gordon will convince you, or I'll wait you out. Either way, you're what, 62? How many years do you really have left?" "Enough," I said quietly. She laughed, soft, mocking. "Look at you, alone in this big house, clinging to your furniture and your pride like they're all you have left. Because they are all you have. You couldn't keep your wife. You're losing your son. You're just a sad old man who couldn't hold on to his family, and you think some papers are going to stop me." "You're wrong about one thing." "What's that?" Her smile was sharp, confident. "I'm not playing games." Her eyes narrowed. "You think you're tough? You think your little legal tricks matter? I've been planning this since before Gordon proposed. Every move calculated, every word chosen. You're not fighting me, old man. You're fighting someone who knows exactly what she wants and exactly how to get it." The doorbell rang. Pearl's expression flickered. For just a fraction of a second, both faces were visible. The predator caught mid-strike and the performer scrambling to reassemble her mask. She straightened up, stepped back, smoothed her dress with quick, precise movements. Her breathing shifted, shoulders relaxed, and the smile returned to her face like she'd pressed a button. I turned away from her, walked through the dining room where Gordon had arranged the serving dishes in neat rows. The table looked good, everything positioned properly, wine glasses gleaming under the chandelier light, into the front hallway where our coats hung on the rack. Behind me, I heard the back door open. Gordon's voice, cheerful and oblivious. "Sorry about that. Work crisis averted. Did I miss anything?" "Just me telling your father how much this evening means to us." Pearl's voice was honey and warmth, every trace of venom erased. The switch had been complete. instantaneous, practiced to perfection. Her parents should be here any minute, Gordon said, appearing beside me as I reached the front door. His face was hopeful, eager, wanting desperately for this evening to heal wounds he couldn't fully see. You're really going to like them, Dad. They're good people. Down to earth, not fancy or pretentious. I reached for the doorknob, paused with my hand on the cold metal. Something felt weighted about this moment, significant in a way I couldn't articulate. The house was warm behind me, dinner ready, wine breathing, my son standing close enough that I could hear him breathing. Pearl somewhere in the kitchen doorway, wearing her performance face, thinking she'd already won. And on the other side of this door, two people I'd never met who were supposed to somehow make sense of this impossible situation. My heartbeat accelerated, not from fear or anxiety, but from some instinct I couldn't name, like standing outside a building before entering, sensing something off about the structure, the weight distribution, the way smoke moves through unseen spaces. 30 years of running into fires had taught me to trust those instincts. I turned the knob, pulled the door open, and everything I thought I knew began to crumble. A couple stood on my porch. 60s, maybe. The man wore a pressed button-down shirt, the woman a simple navy dress. Both smiled in greeting. "You must be—" I started. The man's face changed. His smile froze, then fell away. His eyes locked onto mine. Not a casual glance, but intense focus, studying my features like he was trying to solve a puzzle that suddenly appeared in front of him. He reached out, gripped his wife's arm. "Wait, Donna, look at his face. Really look." The woman turned her full attention to me. Her expression shifted from polite to confused to something else. Her hand went to her mouth. "Your face," she whispered. I know your face." "I don't think we've met before," I said. "We have." The man, Thomas, stepped closer, examining me from one angle then another. His voice was shaking. 25 years ago. You saved our daughter's life." Gordon appeared behind me. "What? Dad, what's he talking about?" Thomas wasn't looking at Gordon. His eyes stayed fixed on mine. "Our house caught fire. September 2000. We got out, but Pearl hid. She was only 7. Terrified, hid in a closet upstairs. Everything slowed down. Pearl, 7 years old. Fire. You went in when other firefighters said it was too dangerous." Donna's voice broke. Tears were streaming down her face. "You brought her out. She was unconscious from smoke, but you saved her." "I saw your face that day," Thomas continued. "Covered in soot, exhausted, but you were holding our little girl. I'll never forget it. The building partially collapsed right after you came out. You could have died saving our daughter." My mind was racing backward. September 2000. 25 years ago. House fire on the east side. Family escaped, but dispatch said child still inside. Structure unstable. Captain ordered us to wait for backup, but there was no time. I'd gone in anyway. Found her in a bedroom closet, unconscious. Carried her out seconds before part of the ceiling came down. "Pearl," I said slowly. "Your daughter Pearl is—" "Our Pearl." Donna reached for my hands, gripped them hard like she needed to confirm I was real. "The little girl you rescued. She has scars on her back and arms from that fire. You gave her a future. You gave us our daughter back." Movement from the kitchen doorway. Pearl emerged, drawn by the voices still wearing that fake smile. "What's going on?" Then she heard Donna's words. "The firefighter who saved our daughter 25 years ago." Pearl stopped walking. Her smile cracked. "The fire—" Her voice was barely audible. "I remember strong arms, someone carrying me." She looked at me, really looked at my face. Her eyes went wide. The firefighter's face through the smoke. Her voice broke. "It was you." She stared at me, and I watched recognition slam into her like a physical force. Her expression cycled through confusion, realization, horror, shame. Her face went white. "You saved me?" she whispered. Then her legs gave out. She dropped to her knees on my living room floor, hands covering her face. A sound came from her throat, something between a gasp and a sob. "What have I done?" Her whole body was shaking. "I didn't know. I'm so sorry. I didn't know." The room was frozen, Thomas and Donna still gripping my arms, tears on both their faces. Gordon standing near the dining room, mouth open, speechless. Pearl on the floor, sobbing into her hands. And me in the center, trying to process what was happening. This woman, This cruel, entitled woman who'd insulted me, manipulated my son, tried to steal my house, called my face scary, mocked my age and loneliness. She was the 7-year-old girl I'd carried out of a burning building 25 years ago, the child whose unconscious weight I'd felt in my arms as I stumbled through smoke, who I'd handed off to paramedics before collapsing from smoke inhalation myself. "Dad," Gordon's voice sounded far away. "You never told me you were a firefighter. You never mentioned—" "It was my job," I heard myself say. "I did my job." "You did more than your job." Thomas's voice was thick with emotion. "You risked your life. We moved to Seattle right after. Too many memories in that house, that neighborhood. But I've thought about you every day for 25 years. Wondered who you were, if you knew what you'd given us." Donna was crying harder now. "We tried to find you afterward, but everything was chaos. And we were so focused on Pearl's recovery. The burns, the trauma, the nightmares. By the time we thought to search, we'd moved, and we didn't even know your name." Pearl made another sound. Not words, just raw anguish. Her parents looked at her, then at me, trying to understand what was happening, why their daughter was on the floor, devastated. "Pearl," Donna said gently. "Honey, what's wrong? This is wonderful. We finally found him. We can finally think." "She didn't know who I was," I said quietly. The words hung in the air. Thomas and Donna looked between Pearl and me, confusion replacing their joy. "She's been trying to take my house," I continued. My voice sounded flat, distant, insulting me, manipulating Gordon, planning to move in after the wedding. I changed my will to protect my property, and she called me an ungrateful old man standing in the way of her future. Silence, complete silence. Pearl's sobs were the only sound. She was curled on herself now, face hidden, shoulders heaving. "The first time we met," I said, looking at Thomas and Donna, "she told me I didn't need a Halloween mask because my face was scary enough already." Donna's hand went to her throat. Thomas went pale. "I didn't know," Pearl managed through tears. "I swear I didn't know it was him. I didn't remember his face clearly, just shadows and smoke and someone carrying me. If you'd known, would you have been different?" The question came out harder than I intended. "Or would you have just used it differently?" She looked up at me then. Her face was destroyed, makeup running, eyes red, expression shattered, and for the first time since I'd met her, I saw something genuine. "I don't know," she whispered. "I was so angry. About the scars, about the nightmares, about being weak and scared. I spent my whole life proving I was strong, that I couldn't be hurt. And I became—" Her voice broke. "I became cruel." Gordon finally found his voice. "Dad, why didn't you ever tell me you were a firefighter?" I looked at my son. "Because I left that life behind when your mother got sick. And after she died, talking about the past felt like opening wounds that hadn't healed. But you saved lives. You saved Pearl's life." "I saved a lot of lives," I said quietly. "It was my job for 30 years. I didn't know what happened to most of them afterward. Didn't know their names or their futures. Did my work and went home." Thomas was staring at me like I was something sacred. "You gave us 25 more years with our daughter. Watched her grow up, graduate, find Gordon. Every moment we've had with her. We owe you." Pearl made another broken sound. I stood there, surrounded by crying people, feeling like the ground had shifted beneath my feet. Everything I'd thought I understood about this situation had just been rewritten. The antagonist was someone I'd saved. The enemy was someone who owed me her life, and I didn't know what that changed. Character count. 5,996. Part 9. The full story. I needed to move. Standing in the hallway with everyone frozen in shock wasn't sustainable. "Let's sit down," I said, my voice cutting through the emotional static. I guided them toward the dining room. Thomas and Donna moved first, still holding each other, taking seats on one side of the table. Gordon helped Pearl up from the floor. She was shaking, unsteady, and led her to a chair across from her parents. She sat, but wouldn't look up, arms wrapped around herself like she was trying to hold her pieces together. I remained standing until everyone else was seated, then took my place at the head of the table. The food I'd prepared sat cooling on the sideboard, forgotten. None of us were thinking about dinner anymore. "Tell me what happened that night," I said to Thomas. He nodded, took a breath. September 2000. The smoke alarm woke us at 2 in the morning. By the time we got out of bed, flames were already consuming the first floor. Electrical fire, faulty wiring in the walls. His hands moved as he spoke, showing the configuration of their old house, the height of the flames. We got out through the back door, made it to the lawn. That's when we realized Pearl wasn't with us. Donna's voice broke as she continued. She'd been sleeping in her room upstairs. When the alarm went off, she panicked. Instead of coming to us, she hid. That's what 7-year-olds do when they're terrified. They hide. The firefighters arrived fast, Thomas said. Maybe 6 minutes. But the structure was already unstable. The captain was setting up, organizing the approach. We kept screaming that our daughter was inside, upstairs, but he said they had to wait for backup. The building could collapse. I remembered. Station 12, East Side. 2 a.m. call. Captain Morrison, different Morrison, no relation, had been cautious. By the book. Smart firefighting. Then one firefighter just went in. Thomas's voice shook. The captain was shouting at him not to go. Said the structure was compromised. But he went anyway. You went anyway. The memory surfaced, sharp and clear after 25 years of being buried. I'd been with Portland Fire for 7 years then. Young enough to think I was invincible, experienced enough to know better. But there was a child in that building. You disappeared into the smoke, Donna said, tears streaming down her face. We waited. It felt like hours, but was probably 3 minutes. Then you came out, coughing, covered in soot. You were carrying Pearl. She wasn't moving. I remembered the weight of her. 7 years old, unconscious, limp in my arms. The beam that fell behind me as I descended the stairs, missing me by maybe 2 feet. The captain's face when I emerged. Fury and relief, fighting for dominance. The paramedics worked on her right there on the lawn, Thomas continued. You stayed until they got her breathing properly. You had burns on your arms and face. He gestured to my forearms, and I realized he could see the scars there, faded but permanent. But you wouldn't leave until you knew she'd be okay. The captain was furious with you, Donna said. But you just said, she's 7 years old. I wasn't waiting. Pearl made a sound, half sob, half gasp. Her hand went unconsciously to her shoulder blade, touching through her blouse where I knew scars lay hidden. We moved to Seattle 3 weeks later, Thomas said. Pearl was in the hospital for 2 weeks, then recovering. The house was destroyed. The insurance paid out, but we couldn't stay in that neighborhood. Too many memories, too much trauma. We tried to find you before we left, but everything was chaos, and we didn't even know your name, just that you were the firefighter who saved our daughter. I looked at Pearl. She was curled forward, face hidden, shoulders shaking. Pearl, I said quietly, look at me. She raised her head slowly. Her face was destroyed, makeup running, eyes swollen, expression raw. Tell me why, I said. Why did you become this person? Her voice came out broken, barely audible. I've spent 25 years trying to pretend that fire didn't define me. I covered the scars with makeup and clothing. I never talked about what happened. I built this persona of someone strong and in control. Someone who couldn't be hurt. But it was fake, Donna said gently. It was all fake. Pearl's hands twisted in her lap. I was terrified people would see me as damaged. So I made myself seem untouchable. Superior. Better than everyone else. If I was the one looking down on people, they couldn't look down on me first. And in doing that, I prompted, I became cruel. The words came out like a confession. I became exactly the kind of person who shouldn't exist in the world. The kind of person I should have been grateful wasn't in my life when I was recovering. Gordon spoke for the first time since we'd sat down. Pearl, why didn't you tell me about any of this? She looked at him, fresh tears spilling, because I didn't want you to see me as broken. But I would have understood. I didn't want understanding, her voice cracked. I wanted to be seen as strong, perfect, someone who had everything together. And look what that turned me into. Look what I did to your father. The silence was heavy. I stood up. Everyone's eyes followed me. I went into that fire to save a child who deserved a chance at life, I said, my voice steady and clear. A child who was innocent and scared and needed help. I'm disappointed that child grew into someone who would treat others with cruelty and contempt. Someone who would try to take what isn't hers, who would manipulate and insult and mock. Pearl's shoulders shook harder. Donna reached across the table but didn't quite touch her daughter. But, I continued, I see genuine remorse now. Not performance. Actual understanding of what you've done. So I forgive you, Pearl. Her head snapped up, eyes wide with disbelief. However, I said, and my tone firmed, forgiveness isn't the same as trust. Respect isn't given automatically just because we share history. It has to be earned. If you want to be part of this family, you'll need to show through actions, not words, that you've changed. That the person you were at 7, the one who deserved to be saved, is someone you're willing to become again. The words hung in the air. Pearl stared at me, then slowly nodded. Unable to speak through her tears, I sat back down. The dinner I'd prepared would go uneaten tonight, but something more important than food had been served. Truth, recognition, the possibility of transformation. Gordon reached for Pearl's hand. She gripped it like a lifeline. Thomas looked at me with something like reverence. 25 years, he said softly. 25 years we've carried gratitude with no way to express it, and now we find you like this. Life has strange timing, I replied. Donna wiped her eyes. What happens now? I looked at each of them. Pearl broken and honest for perhaps the first time. Gordon confused but present. Thomas and Donna grateful and grieving simultaneously. Now, I said, we see if words become actions, if remorse becomes change, if understanding becomes growth. Pearl nodded again, still crying. I'll prove it to you. I promise I'll prove it. Then prove it, I said simply. Not tomorrow, not in some grand gesture, in the small choices you make every day from this point forward. The evening stretched on. We talked more, about the fire, about my career, about the years between then and now. Eventually, Thomas and Donna left, hugging me at the door with gratitude that felt almost painful in its intensity. Gordon and Pearl followed soon after. At the door, Pearl paused. Thank you, she whispered, for saving me then, and for giving me a chance now. I nodded, didn't offer false comfort or premature reconciliation, just acknowledgement. After they left, I stood in my quiet house, surrounded by the dinner that never happened, and wondered what came next. I'd prepared for war, built legal fortifications, armed myself against manipulation. Instead, fate had intervened and done what no strategy could accomplish. It had revealed truth, and now we'd all have to live with it. The first time Pearl asked to visit, 2 weeks after that dinner, I almost said no. I'd like to talk, she said on the phone. Her voice was different, smaller, careful. Just for a few minutes. I'll bring coffee. No agenda, no pressure, just if you're willing. I agreed. Curiosity, maybe, or the desire to see if her remorse had staying power. She arrived mid-morning with 2 coffees and the kind of nervous energy that comes from genuine anxiety rather than performance. We sat on my front porch. I didn't invite her inside, and she didn't presume to ask. I started seeing someone, she said, hands wrapped around her cup. A therapist. She specializes in trauma and compensation behaviors. I'm trying to understand why I became the person I was. That's a good step. I know it doesn't undo what I said or did, but I want you to know I'm serious about changing. She looked at me directly. Can I ask about your firefighting career? Gordon said you never talked about it. It was my job for 30 years. I did what needed doing. You saved a lot of people besides me, didn't you? Some, not all. You can't save everyone. She was quiet for a moment. But you tried. That's what matters. We talked for 20 minutes. She asked questions that felt genuine, listened without trying to steer the conversation toward herself. When she left, she thanked me for my time and didn't push for another visit, but she came back the following week, and the week after that. Small visits, careful conversations. I watched for manipulation, for signs of the old Pearl resurface. Didn't see them. Saw someone struggling to rebuild herself instead. The wedding came in early August, not the elaborate event Pearl had originally demanded. Gordon called to give me the details. Small garden venue, 30 guests, simple ceremony. Pearl insisted on keeping it small, he said. Said she wanted it to be about us, not about proving anything to anyone. I attended. Sat in the 3rd row, not front and center, but present. Watched Gordon and Pearl exchange vows. She was trembling. I could see it from where I sat, but her voice was steady. Thomas and Donna cried through the entire ceremony. The reception lasted 2 hours, felt genuine rather than performative. A week later, Gordon called with news. We signed a lease on a 2-bedroom in the Hawthorne district. Move-in date is September 1st. That's good, I said. Building your own space. Yeah. Pearl was actually the one who insisted, said we needed to start our marriage in our own place. He paused. Not your place. Our place. She was clear about that. Relief mixed with satisfaction. The boundary I'd defended had been respected, not because I'd forced it, but because they'd chosen to honor it. The letter arrived mid-August. 3 pages, handwritten in careful script. Dear Clarence, it began, I can't take back calling you scary when you open the door. I can't undo mocking your furniture, your neighborhood, your life. I can't erase trying to manipulate you into giving up what you'd earned. I can only say I'm ashamed of who I was and grateful you're giving me a chance to become someone better. You saved my life twice, once from fire and once from myself when you refused to let me continue being cruel without consequence. Thank you for both. The letter went on, apologizing specifically for each offense, expressing gratitude for each boundary I'd maintained, acknowledging that change would take time and consistent effort. I sat at my desk with that letter, considering my response. Eventually, I wrote back. Shorter, simpler. I acknowledge your efforts. Keep doing the work. Respect is earned through sustained action. I'm willing to see where this leads. I mailed it the next day. Late August brought warm evenings and the kind of peace that comes after storms pass. I sat on my front porch, watching the neighborhood settle into dusk. My house stood solid behind me, unchanged, still mine, secure. The legal documents I'd prepared sat filed in my desk drawer, necessary at the time, but no longer weapons I needed to wield. My phone rang, Gordon's name on the screen. Hey, Dad, he said. Pearl and I were thinking of trying that new Italian place downtown this weekend. Want to join us? His voice was easy, natural. No tension, no hidden agenda. Just a son inviting his father to dinner. Saturday work for you? I asked. Perfect. Just dinner. Nothing formal. We just want to see you. I'd like that. I'll be there. After we hung up, I sat in the quiet, watching the sun finish setting. Thought about revenge plots and legal strategies, about the careful walls I'd built to protect what was mine. All necessary at the time. All rendered unnecessary, not through my strategies, but through truth's intervention. I'd prepared for war, built fortifications, armed myself with documents and boundaries and determination, ready to fight someone trying to take what I'd earned. Instead, I'd discovered the enemy was someone I'd saved, someone whose cruelty had been compensation for wounds I'd helped create by rescuing her from that fire, leaving her scarred and traumatized. The irony was profound. My heroism had indirectly created my antagonist, but facing that truth had transformed everything. Pearl's armor had cracked when confronted with who I was. Her defenses couldn't survive the weight of understanding, and in breaking, she'd found a chance to rebuild properly. My victory wasn't in punishing her. It was in maintaining my dignity, holding my boundaries, and allowing space for genuine transformation. I'd won by refusing to be moved from my principles, by protecting what was mine without becoming cruel in return. The real battle wasn't about property or wills or legal documents. It was about respect, truth, and the possibility of redemption. The evening air cooled, streetlights flickered on. Somewhere down the block, a dog barked. Normal sounds of a normal evening in a normal neighborhood. My neighborhood, my home, my peace. I'd saved a 7-year-old girl from a burning building 25 years ago, not knowing she'd grow into someone who'd threaten everything I valued, but I'd also given her a second chance to become someone worth saving again. Sometimes revenge is unnecessary. Sometimes truth does the work for you, and sometimes the greatest victory is simply standing firm until the storm passes and peace returns. I stood, stretched, walked inside my house. Tomorrow I'd have coffee with Tom from across the street. Saturday I'd have dinner with my son and daughter-in-law. Next week I'd tend my garden, work in my garage, live my life. The war was over, not because I'd destroyed my enemy, but because truth had transformed her, and I'd stood my ground long enough to see it happen. That was enough. That was victory. That was justice. I closed the door behind me, locked it, and smiled. my house, my peace, my life, all still mine. If you like this story, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share your impressions of this story in the comments. To listen to the next story, click on the box on the left. Thank you for watching.